welcome to Roots and Realities, where we talk about motherhood, marketing, and everything in between. I'm your host, Emma Hushka, founder of Fiddle Leaf Marketing and mom of two little girls navigating the beautiful chaos of growing a business while growing a family. This podcast is all about real stories from real women, the kind of conversations that happen when the to-do list is long, the coffee is cold, and the wins, big or small, are worth celebrating. Whether you're building a brand, packing school lunches, or just trying to find a little space to breathe, you are in the right place. This is Roots and Realities. Let's get into it. Welcome to today's episode of Roots and Realities, showing up online without burning out. I'm your host, Emma, founder and CEO of Fiddle Leaf Marketing, and today I am joined by Leanne Miller. Leanne is the creative force behind Leanne Miller Media, where she helps women-led brands turn their message into social media content that feels strategic and authentic. A seasoned photographer and content strategist, Leanne's early work included running her own photography business and leading mission-driven media for a nonprofit. Today, she works with business owners who run their own social media but don't want it to run their entire life, providing collaborative support with social media strategy, visuals, and content creation. A mom and an avid reader, Leanne believes that mom-owned brands deserve to share content that they're proud of. Content that reflects the hard work and heart they pour into their businesses every day. I met Leanne through We Elevate, a Pacific Northwest women's entrepreneur group, and I have learned so much from her content, and I knew she would be a great guest to share her experience, her expertise, and a bit about motherhood. So Leanne, welcome to Roots and Realities.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I know we connected a few months ago and immediately we're both like, okay, we need to collaborate. We need to talk more. So I'm excited to learn more about you today. So to kick us off, can you tell me what led you to start Leanne Miller Media?
Yeah, for sure. I started this business officially when I was 18 years old. There's been a lot of life and a break in between, so I still consider myself like a new business owner. I restarted my business about a year ago, just as we were kind of thinking about what life would look like when my son went into kindergarten this past fall. And it was really important to me to be present, like to be available and to be there, in the mornings to get my son to school. That was just personally what we wanted for our family. But I still wanted to be able to, support my family, provide some income, and also do something that I love. So it wasn't really on my radar to restart my business. I just have had all these ups and downs in life and I wasn't thinking about it. But we ended up doing like a mini family photo shoot for Christmas. And I just remember being there getting my picture taken. And I was like, wait a minute, I can do this. Like, I know how to do this. I have the skills, I have the gear. Like, I could at least try and see how it goes to restart my business. There are all these different options available. I've done senior portraits and families and all sorts of stuff in the past. But I decided to niche down to branding photography and content creation. I love marketing. I'm not like, an expert or like I don't have a degree in anything. It's just something that I've taught myself over time and had the opportunity to work in a nonprofit organization in media and marketing also. So kind of just done the scrappy entrepreneur route of learning marketing. And I just love being able to bring stories to life visually and through content. And so I wanted to niche down to branding. And as I started just posting my own stuff on Instagram, I had a lot of people asking me like how I was staying consistent and people telling me, you make this look really easy. And social media doesn't feel very easy for a lot of business owners. And I knew I wasn't doing anything like special or different. I'm a mom and I was just creating content in my normal life. I'm not like an influencer or anything. And so I started sharing more of just what I was doing, and that was really resonating with people. And I've kind of weaved that into my business now too, providing more of the strategy side of things for business owners also.
Amazing. I love that. I feel like your start and what you were looking for is so similar to so many moms that start their businesses, right? Of like wanting to be able to get their kids to daycare and kind of show up as a mom, but also, how does that tie in of how I can also, make a living and just like you said, especially something that you're passionate about. So I love that it was during a photo shoot. You're like, wait a second, I could be on that. I could
Yeah.
be on that end and kind of get it, going again. Is there anything that feels different now? And I'm actually really curious since you kind of had that pause pause in your business, like that you restarted. So you could take this question however you want to, but like, is there anything that feels different now versus when you first started, let's say a year ago, versus when you first started, when you originally launched your business
Hmm.
before?
Yeah, I mean, everything feels different from when I was 18 years old until now. My body's different, my mind is different, my life is different, everything.
Hear
So
you
I've
there.
definitely noticed that it is interesting to have had a break in between. I know a lot of women start a business and then start a family, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of this figuring out how does this all integrate together.
Mm-hmm.
I think just for me personally, having a break has been a really great gift because I've kind of been able to figure out what's important to me as a family first and then kind of weave those things into business.
Mm-hmm.
So I often have to remind myself to not compare to my past self or like my past 20-year-old self who could
Mm-hmm.
work for like 10 hours straight
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I think part of why there was a break in between is because I was just so focused on work when I was younger. So having a family has helped redefine like what actually is important in
Mm-hmm.
life. And I think that's something I love about working with mom-owned businesses too, that often there's a bigger purpose behind it and it's fulfilling,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
not your whole life.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I couldn't agree more. It's exactly why I wanted to work with mom owned businesses is once I became a mom, it was like, just like you said, like, wait, there's a bigger purpose here and something that it's all for. And just like you have always was very career driven. And then I had a family and I was like, wait, I love what I do, but how can I also, make this about my family rather than, trying to fit my family into my career. I know that other moms relate to you, being one of those because of, the way that you do lead, that way. And it sounds like so much of your foundation. I'm going to pivot a little bit to content strategy because you've been sharing on social for a little bit now. I know about content pillars and, as a paid marketer, paid advertising, a lot of my focus is working with clients to deliver their content at a broader scale and to really scale being a kind of a key word rather than kind of some of these foundational pieces that I think you do such an excellent job of really helping people identify, just how to come up with content. And in 2026, I know you already mentioned it. People are like, it just takes over your life, and how do I, you make it look easy, and it's just such a huge part of social media and growing a business in our generation. And but to come up with content and like not feel like you're just beating your head against a wall. So you've had these content pillars that you've talked about, and I'd love to hear what are they and why did you build it out this way? Like, where did this come from, and what does that look like for someone that maybe hasn't heard about content pillars before?
Yeah, so content pillars is just a fancy name for the categories of what you're posting. So there's no right or wrong way to do that. There's a million different ways out there of how to structure your content so that you have, these different topics or
Mm-hmm.
categories of what you'll be posting. But the big thing for business owners, I think, is just having some sort of structure. So it doesn't have to be mine, it doesn't have to be my exact content pillars. I like mine, but there's lots of other great ways too. But I think that what's really hard is when you're trying to be consistent, because consistency in like organic content marketing is a big buzzword, but especially for people who are juggling so much else in life, you can't just be putting out all this content all the time feeling like it's not leading you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a really hard thing to keep doing. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like what people say the definition of insanity is when you just keep doing the same thing over and over and you're not getting any results. For people who have a lot on their plate, seeing those results can make a big difference. It can help you keep going and just feel like, okay, I'm not just wasting my time
Mm-hmm.
throwing all this content out there into the world and feeling like it's not doing anything for my business. So I think for business owners, there are often two reasons why you're being consistent and not seeing results with your content. And one of those things is that you're putting out a lot of content that people really enjoy and it resonates with them. And like you've got people following along and they love it, but they're not necessarily buying from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that for a lot of business owners is the end goal on
Mm-hmm.
social media. Or you're posting a lot of sales focused content.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're always putting your offers out there and
Mm-hmm.
always telling people how to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And people are still not ultimately buying because they don't feel connected enough. And that's a big thing on social media. You can speak to this
Mm-hmm.
probably, but with paid advertising, it's kind of like we want someone to see this one thing and then they're ready
Mm-hmm.
to take the next step
Mm-hmm.
already. But with organic content marketing, there's a little bit more of like a long game and a lead up.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those steps are important.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was thinking about making my own content pillars, I just knew that everything that I posted needed to have a purpose. My 20-year-old business owner self could just spend a bunch of time making fun content just because I wanted to.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a mom and someone who has this really finite amount of time
Mm-hmm.
to build my business, I knew that everything I put out there had to be
Mm-hmm.
purposeful. And so essentially, the content pillars that I've designed follow the flow of like a traditional sales funnel. So it starts with introduction, which is just who are you? What's the vibe? Like, what's the world of your brand like? And then once people are introduced to you, then you want to nurture them through education and through empathy. The education, when I call informative content, and empathy, I call interactive content, just anything that helps people relate to you as a person, shows that you care about what they're going through and that you're able to support them. And then the last one is invitation. So that's where once you've laid this groundwork, you can invite people to take the next step, whether that's booking like a strategy call or making a purchase or something like that. So that is like the basic. I
Mm-hmm.
have a whole blog post detailing all of it that we can maybe add in the
Yeah.
show notes if people want to dive in a little bit deeper. But we can definitely chat more about it too if you have any questions. But that's kind of the basic outline of it.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think exactly what you said is like the finite amount of time. I think it's critical. And, a lot of who our audience is, it's about marketing and being a mom that, just like you said, to even take the leap and start a business, but then to grow the business and take the time to do what you need to do. But, most of us haven't started multiple businesses that like we don't know what that looks like. Or, to your point, how much that changes and like how much, your priorities change and your understanding of what it takes to grow a business, whether or not you have someone, guiding you. So I think having, every single thing that you put out there have a purpose and feel that at least that energy that you are creating content with is going towards something that, feels intentional and strategic, I think is so just such a cool way, effective way that you've put this together. And just like you said, whether or not that makes sense for, anyone listening for their business or whether or not they build out, what their pillars are and something, from your content. Like we worked through as a team of, I worked with my creative strategist who does a lot of our organic of like, I want pillars. I want, specific buckets of like, what do we, for our agency, what's important to us to grow and to share in social media. What, I think is a cool way that we did it of like, what's resonated, what's done well, when we have seen some success, and then how can we put this into buckets that align with our values of what we want to represent online. And then it then makes planning for the month so much easier when it's like, all right, does it go into which bucket does it fill? We kind of look at it as like content buckets. Very similar concept, and again really inspired by what you've seen, shared of how to do that. And I've shared it with other business owners as well, so shout out anyone
Cool.
that I brought up content pillars, Leanne Miller, and definitely just like you said, we'll make sure to link that blog and your social channels because I've learned of so many different ways of looking at organic to grow my business, which is very, marketing. I'm very familiar with marketing, but organic's not my expertise. But I think, together they can just be really dangerous.
I think like what you mentioned with the idea of the mental load, like just having some structure in place so that you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every single time you go to make content, because that can really hurt consistency too when you just every day wake up and you're like, what am I going to post today? And I remember, I don't know if you remember this post that you did a while ago, but you were also talking about when you're trying to put stuff out there and you're like, what do you even tell people to do? Are they supposed to like it?
Right.
Are they supposed to comment it? There's like so many options.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've done with my content pillars is assign like a specific goal or metric to each of those pillars. Because when you are trying to ask yourself what's resonating and what's actually working for my business, it can be really hard because Instagram just loves to show us views. Like Instagram is like, this is how many views this got. And you're like, okay, sometimes that's great. And sometimes that's really
Yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that doesn't make me feel like it's doing well. But views isn't the end all be all, like views are part of the story, but they're not the whole story. And so it's really helpful to have a structure where you can also look and say, okay, for this type of content, like for example, educational content, I expect people to save that because they're going to want to look back on it later. And so my educational content might not have a ton of views, but the people that are watching it are saving it. And that tells me, okay, this is working for this specific goal that I've set.
I love that. And mine was like and that's what my kind of empathy of showing up, sometimes it's like in the moment, whatever I'm frustrated about, whatever's on my heart or my mind, I'm like, I'm going live or I'm just posting something. And I think that's been the part for me that's exciting is unplanned content. And I think usually I get my best engagement when it comes to like that empathy side, because I was like, what are we asking people? Are we liking, saving, commenting, sharing, and, just kind of making a kind of a joke of the whole thing. But I love, the strategy behind using all of these engagement options that Instagram has to your advantage of, in these pillars, okay, what am I actually looking to do? And I always tell my clients that, if you didn't get the views or the engagement on this post, that doesn't mean it was a bad post. That just means you weren't at the disposal of the algorithms that day. And that it, just like you said, that doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. That doesn't mean you're not doing things right. You just have to keep trying. And, obviously the more intentional you are about it, the more consistent, the same words you're using is where people see success. So I love kind of associating that with page, like your conversion. Is it engagement? Is it a lead? Then you're setting the right expectation around it. And then of course your content's going to reflect that.
Yeah, definitely.
One mistake you see founders make all the time? And I definitely have like a few of, like, if someone asks me this question, I have like a few off the top of my head from a paid ads perspective. But is there anything that you start working with a client or start talking to, someone just more casually from an organic perspective and in a mistake you see time and time again?
No, that's a great question. I feel like your example that you just gave of your empathetic content was such a good example, because I think a lot of people forget that social media is social and it's different from traditional marketing. When I look at a billboard, I'm expecting to be advertised to. But when I open my phone and start scrolling, I'm not actually wanting to just be bombarded with all of this like super polished conversion content. I'm there because I want to like just check out for a few minutes. I want to connect with people. I want to see something funny or laugh. So it's not an entire strategy to always do this kind of more just human, authentic content. Like I was saying, if you do that all the time, people might love it, but then they might not even know what you do so that they can work with you. But it's totally a part of it. And I think that's something that, especially right now in social media, like there's a lot of AI generated content, there's a lot of generic advice, and I think people are really just craving like connecting and being out in the real world. We're all like post-COVID, tired of just this whole online existence. We want to be out there connecting with other people. And it's really important to integrate that into your content too. And I guess it's not so much a mistake. I think it's more of just like feeling like you need the permission. And so I really want to be able to give the permission that you can be a person on social media. You can be social. And it's not going to be at the detriment of your business. It could actually be a benefit to you and your business to do that.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think just like you said, social media, not forgetting about the social part, because yes, it's such a huge marketing tool now, but that's not what the creation and what the true purpose was from the beginning, and just like what people are always seeking when they go there. And, I've tried to look at it when I do it is like, this is who I am. This is like, if you get on a call with me and you are a potential client or a client, like this is how I'm going to talk. This is more real me than, some of the more planned content. It's all still things I stand by. But, and I think that you said, and what things I've seen you do is like, people need to feel that they connect with you. And I think through content and planned strategic content, you can do that. But through just like hopping on and being real, just being a human, I think it's just such a cool way. And I love when other brands do that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm just like sitting having coffee with this person. Just like you said, we're post-COVID. It's just not what it used to be. This is how people connect. But it's just a really cool way to feel like you know someone that you may never have met, but you'll feel more comfortable to then be as vulnerable to open them up to your business, something so important to you. And again, I just enjoy it more because I'm like, this is me. Like, this is what I'm dealing with, rather than this like, okay, this is what I'm going to talk to you about today, which again is important. But personally, I'm more like a let's sit down, chat, and hence this podcast, like we have some conversation pieces, but like I just like to connect with people and talk about things that matter. So let's talk a little bit about, we're getting into the busy mom and the motherhood and work. If a busy mom has, let's say, 30 minutes a week to create content, where do you think she should put her energy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was also thinking while you were talking about, it's so fun to just be able to come on and kind of talk about whatever you want. But lots of times for us parents, we can't just like make a post whenever we have an idea. It's great to know that you totally can if you want to. But also, I think the reality is more like what you're saying, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like I have this chunk of time and it has to be when I'm able to be focused. Like, I personally can't sit there and write a post while my son is home. Like, even if he's watching TV or something, then it's like every other minute, it's like, hey, mom, look at this, you know?
Yes.
So, with a finite amount of time, I would say go into that time with a plan already, like know what you want to post already. So, if you are just going through your day and you have an idea or you're scrolling and you see something, write that down for later. And then when you actually go in to make content, don't open Instagram. Because if you have 30 minutes and you start scrolling for
Mm-hmm.
inspiration, as
Mm-hmm.
we often say that we're doing when we start going
Mm-hmm.
through, all the posts in our feed, then that 30 minutes goes away so
Mm-hmm.
quickly. Just go into that document or however you make your posts, and you can just write it all out right in that 30-minute time block. And then if you need to grab a video clip or a photo or whatever, you can do that and then just go ahead and just post it,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
overthinking or not having to send it through all these revisions and stuff. But if that's the time that you have, then just go for it and get it done. And then it's one thing checked off your list.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's another reason why for business owners, social media feels like such a drain to your energy because it's like always in the back of your mind. Like, oh, I should have done a post. I didn't do it in that time. I need to do a post. And it just is like constantly
Mm-hmm.
coming up. So if you have some time to do it, do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, people
Mm-hmm.
don't mind authenticity on
Mm-hmm.
social media.
Mm-hmm.
So just go ahead and put it out there into the world.
Kind of remove that pressure of it, right? And I think it ends up taking so much of the fun and excitement out of it when it becomes more of like, oh, I have to do this versus like, I get to create today, here's my time and I have a plan and I feel good about it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's like, right, maybe even, and I'm big on like
Yeah.
journaling and like affirmations, like maybe it's like writing, like, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to get it done and I'm going to post, like telling yourself and setting those expectations with yourself ahead of time. It's like, this is how we're going into this. And I've been a big fan of the like power hours of like power content. And literally, I like sit down. It's like I got a few different tops to change into to switch out, doing some reels. And it is like I have my ideas because I think too, for me, like throughout the month, there's times that like I'm
Yeah.
sure as hell not creating content this week or, today, that if I'm feeling it, like feeling good about, how I look, how I sound, how I feel, then like I'm gonna knock it out, and because I'm in that zone, and it's okay to not be in that zone every week, every day, right? Plan your content around your cycle or whenever
Hmm.
you have certain energy or feel better throughout the month, because especially as women, that is a very real part of our lives. Most, if not all of us, that use that to your advantage rather than trying to work against it. So that's just another thing that I've tried to like put myself in a better spot to not set myself up for like hating everything, but that's just because of things that are out of my control. So something else that I think with that 30 minutes, like try to plan it at a time of day that maybe you have more energy, that you're making it work for you and not the other way around.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about a little bit more about motherhood and work. This is again the part of starting this podcast that I'm really excited about, because this is the stuff that when I consume this type of content, I just feel better. I'm like, I'm not the only mom that's struggling to like balance all of this. So
Yeah.
to you, what is the hardest part of balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship?
That is a big question. I think that it has changed over time, which I'm really grateful for, just in society in
Mm-hmm.
general,
Mm-hmm.
that the work of household labor and caretaking is so much more valued
Mm-hmm.
than it used to be. But I think that that's one thing that I come up against is feeling like behind or
Mm-hmm.
feeling,
Mm-hmm.
this like, oh, I'm not as successful as
Mm-hmm.
somebody who has more time.
Mm-hmm.
But then looking around me and realizing the long-term impact of what I'm doing as a business owner, but also as a mom, like
Mm-hmm.
that's like generational impact. Like the work
Absolutely.
that we're doing day to day, even the really mundane things like we're wiping noses and
Mm-hmm.
making peanut butter and jelly and all this stuff, but it actually does matter,
Mm-hmm.
like long
Mm-hmm.
term for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've definitely had to remind myself in times where things feel slow.
I hear you. And I think those little things, like those day to day, yesterday was a perfect example. It's a Tuesday, recording this on a Tuesday, and it was Monday, and the Super Bowl was on Sunday. So we didn't get the laundry done like I usually do on Sundays. My husband was great, moved it between, to get it washed and dried, but then we just didn't get around to putting it away like we usually would. And between two girls that change clothes X amount of times a day just feels, the bottomless laundry pit that I know a lot of people can relate to. That yesterday it was like, I'm going to get the laundry done, like put everything away before the kids get home. And it was, my daughter had gymnastics at 3, so it's already a shorter day. And it was like 2:30. I was like, I haven't put the girls' laundry away, and I need to leave to go get her for like this. In this guilt, I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't put the laundry away. But yeah, I'd been in
Mm.
meetings. I worked a full day. It was like this terror of, just like you said, it's like trying to realize, like, first of all, those things matter, but at the same time, if the laundry sits in the hamper, these are a 2 and a 4-year old, they're wrinkly clothes, like they don't care, they want to get dirty clothes out of the dirty hamper. It's like setting this like
Yeah.
unrealistic expectation for myself or even for my family. That I heard something the other day that, like, and I'm gonna butcher it, but basically it was like, you make like a bigger deal out of things than it needs to be. So I think it was like this concept of like telling yourself, and I'll put it in the notes because it was really good. I saw just like a reel on Instagram, but like, I don't need to make this as big of a deal. And like telling yourself, like thinking
Hmm.
throughout your day, how many things you're making like a way bigger deal than it needs to be. And so that's something, as my balance of motherhood and entrepreneurship, of just like you said, like, would I be further along if I didn't go put that laundry away, or if my daughter didn't have
Hmm.
gymnastics at 3, that I'm so grateful, just like you said, I get to like be a part of that with
Yeah.
her, that if I worked for someone else, like, who knows if that would have been something I was able to do. So anyways, these are just things I feel like on a daily basis that I'm trying to self assure and get through, that I know so many other women and moms and entrepreneurs are dealing with while balancing a family.
Yeah.
What are some boundaries or habits that have helped you protect your time or energy? Do you have any like specific like boundaries that you've set with your business to protect that? And I know you said, you found what was important before relaunching your business. So, I'd love to hear more about how you kind of make that work, and any boundaries or habits.
Yeah, one big boundary for me, and it's kind of interesting as a social media person, I'm in the world of social media a lot, but I do my best to have a whole day each week that I don't go on social media.
Mm,
And it's often the day that I actually get the most like inspiration and content ideas and just feel the most rejuvenated to actually be able to keep showing up.
mm-hmm,
So that's a really big one. And I mean, along with that is just the idea that like we don't actually have to be constantly present on social media. I think it's something where it feels like it is another way where we can feel like we're missing out. Like, oh, if I'm not,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
on the trends or reacting to everything that comes up, we can feel like it's not propelling our business forward
mm-hmm,
in a way. But rest is so, so important. I
mm-hmm,
wish I hadn't had to learn that the hard way,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I think a lot of us have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think too, and I love that you just like have a dedicated day. I've tried to, especially with like some personal stuff with what's happening, kind of like the macro, is I feel like I'm like an all or nothing type person. So I'm either like deep and, all in, or I have to like pull back. And it's probably not a healthy thing that I can't be like a little bit there. But I think, like you said, recognizing, because you probably burn yourself out, like you said, and what a lot of us do is we kind of have to. And I think that then makes you set more clear boundaries, right? When you do feel,
Hmm.
rock bottom, it doesn't need to be that extreme, but like when you do burn yourself out, or you do get to like not a great point, then it's like, oh, this is a boundary I'm going to set, and I'm going to be strict about it because I know what it's like to not have this. So I hear you, but I do think it's almost like you almost have to experience it to take it seriously, right? To know how important it is, and to be clear with that boundary. But I love the dedicated
Yeah.
day. That's like, just like you said, it's like planning in advance, then you actually make it happen.
Yeah, that's definitely something like I don't really consider myself much of a planner, but I feel like as a mom, I have had to learn so much to plan
Mm-hmm.
ahead
Mm-hmm.
because it is like what you're saying, like if you're not feeling great, like that impacts the way that you're able to show up. It's so normal to
Mm-hmm.
experience it and to be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, okay, I am stressed out today or I took on too much."
Mm-hmm.
And it's impacting not just me, but it's impacting the way that I'm showing up in my household.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing to have to process and go through. But it is
Mm-hmm.
a great opportunity to really lean into yourself and
Mm-hmm.
to recognize your limits,
Mm-hmm.
not to feel guilty about them because everyone has them. But just in parenting, those fluctuations just have have a big impact. And
Absolutely.
so you can't just like push through. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of us in our younger days were probably not doing as well as we thought we were
Mm-hmm.
because you can just push through and keep
Mm-hmm.
going and you
Mm-hmm.
don't really have to be on top of things.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're managing so many household systems and
Mm-hmm.
caring for little people
Mm-hmm.
who have a lot of feelings,
Mm-hmm.
then it's really noticeable when something's not in alignment within yourself.
100%. And it's almost like accountability. I kind of was thinking that when you said that, like my younger self, it was like, well, I feel like I'm, climbing or growing and, I was fine. Like you said, you power through and you didn't really have that accountability other than to yourself, which again is a whole another conversation. Now as, a mom, like you said, you have accountability, possibly to your partner and to, your littles, and your energy, can really go, dictate one way or the other. And that accountability to show up, for other people, especially littles that rely on that, and the emotional regulation to have in yourself to then do that for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another level, like you said, in your 20s that or depending when you have kids, that maybe you just don't need. But I absolutely can relate to that. What's a recent moment that you felt like, I think I just said one I just mentioned yesterday, but you felt like, okay, this is working, and one where everything spiraled?
Well, definitely the losing control one feels easier to think of off the
You're
top of
like,
my
yep.
head. Yep. Yeah, we were sick all weekend. There is right now in our area just this
Mm-hmm.
horrible flu going around, and my whole family got it over the weekend. And yesterday, Monday, was supposed to be like Monday is my content batching day. And we've had so many like no school days and just
Mm-hmm.
weird schedules.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was so looking forward to like, okay, I can batch my content.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be okay if I have my block, my time block. Which I love that I've become a planner enough to have the time
Yeah.
blocks and to figure out how to set myself up well. But then you have to be willing to be flexible because
Mm-hmm.
that's just the name of the game in
Mm-hmm.
parenting. And so yesterday was a big one where I was like, man, like this whole plan, it feels like it just goes out the window,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I just have to
Absolutely.
scrap that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in becoming more of a planner, I've also learned to add a little bit of grace and flexibility in that too,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to
Mm-hmm.
say like, okay, maybe I won't get this, exact chunk of time that I was hoping for,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean I can't rearrange and look at the rest of the week and
Mm-hmm.
make a different plan.
Yeah.
It's great to have the foundations to set
Mm-hmm.
you up well, but then it's also great to, in the moment, say, maybe the plan's not going to work, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's another thing that I really, really hope comes through with content marketing too, that like it's great to have the content pillars, it's great to
Mm-hmm.
stay consistent, but like if you miss one post in a week, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah. And life happens.
Yeah.
I think that's like, like just like you said, you can have time scheduled, you can have this awesome plan, but like kids get sick. There's, the East Coast just had this like crazy snowstorm, and I know it canceled, school for like things happen out of our control. And like it's one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with. And a lot of us as humans, it's like we can't control everything. And there's only so much. So just like you said, you can have this plan, but also shit happens. And to be able to roll with the punches because it's gonna happen. And each time you pivot and just like I said, okay, well we'll switch things up, but like giving yourself that grace and like humanity that you would give to someone else that's like, I didn't record my content today. Would you be like, well, you suck, like that, you'd be like,
Yeah.
you're, that's fine, no big deal, like you like
Yeah.
you take care of yourself, because you can't do any of this without your health or without your emotional health or whatever that may be. And something my husband pointed out to me last year that really kind of put this forefront for me is he's like, you're always running at 110%. So if anything, like what we're talking about, life happens, a kid gets sick, or any like little blip in my 110, I to talk about foundation, I just like crumble. It's like I'm already
Mm,
operating at such a ridiculously high level for like what a human should expect. I get sick, like I lose all control because I'm already barely keeping it all there. So my goal has been, and I'm still working on it, but it's like, what does it look like to operate at like 90, 95, which for me is, cranking it down, but then I have room. And like, yeah, maybe I could get to like 80 someday. But like, what can I do to have a little bit of like, everything's not going to crumble if my kids were home for a few days a couple weeks ago. I think it was our last time we needed to reschedule this, and it's like it was a few days, and then everything gets just like everything has to bump to the busy week that's later on. But it's like I have to have room for that because it's going to happen, and I can't crumble. And I got to give
Yeah.
myself grace. It can be hard, but so again, these are just some things
Yeah.
that I think aren't talked about enough, right? Of like, we're
Yeah.
all just out here trying our best, but also like things happen that are unexpected, and like
hmm
that's okay.
Yeah. And in those moments, we have to also be willing to let ourselves lean on our support systems if we're, privileged enough to have
Yeah.
systems like that
Mm-hmm.
in place. But I think especially what you're describing reminds me so much of just life as a high achiever, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like I
Mm-hmm.
have to hold everything and I have to do it all right and I have
Yep.
to do it all perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And in my life as a high achiever,
Mm-hmm.
recovering high achiever too, it's helped so much to say that it's okay. Like, of course, I want to be present for my son, but if I
Mm-hmm.
can't pick him up from school one day, that's okay
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
there's all these different things that can adjust and change.
Yep.
If I don't get my time to work this week or yesterday or whatever, like, yes, I can say, okay, it's okay if I don't get that done, but also
Mm-hmm.
I can say, okay, maybe there's another thing. Maybe I can make it work some
Mm-hmm.
other way.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with relying on support and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I can't
Mm-hmm.
actually do it all by myself. I physically can.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I always need that reminder. So I'm glad that this came up as well because I know other people do. Because just like you said, people that have maybe this personality type and this is just how you've been conditioned. Again, separate podcast. But, those are probably the same people that are not the best at, relying, even if there is support there, about asking for that. And absolutely, you nail on the head there. In something else, and I kind of mentioned it with what you just said of like, what would I say to a friend that's in this situation? And to ourselves, we're like, you're gonna beat yourself up and be like, oh, you're not showing up, you're not picking your kid up from daycare, from school today. Like, what a jerk! He's gonna be devastated. It's like, but what if your best friend texted you and was like, I'm so upset, I'm not picking, my little guy up today. You're not gonna berate her. You're gonna say all these things to make her feel better and uplift her. So to treat yourself like you would someone that you care about. And
Yeah.
and it's tough to keep that top of mind when it's not something you've always done, but to like recondition yourself to do that, I think has been a really cool exercise that I've tried to do with some of these situations.
And that's a great point too. On the flip side, where you were asking, what's one of those moments where you realize, like, okay, this
Yeah.
is a good thing, this is
Yeah.
working. I feel like the gift of watching your children watch you build a business is incredible
Mm-hmm.
too. And
Mm-hmm.
building a business, running your own business, it's not for everyone, and that's okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the right thing for
Mm-hmm.
every family. But I know for myself personally and for other moms in business that they get to watch you. They get like a firsthand view, like
Mm-hmm.
even though sometimes when you're trying to work and they're there, it feels like a lot, they
Mm-hmm.
actually get to watch you and see
Yeah.
what you're doing. And, my son, like, he's so curious and he asks so many questions, and I love it. So he
Uh-huh.
knows a lot about what I do at work, which
Oh,
is kind of funny
that's so
and
cool.
really sweet. Yeah, because we'll be talking about someone I've worked with, and he's like, I think they should hire you once a week. I think that would be good for their business. And I'm like, oh, okay. I think you're probably right. Like he's got this little like entrepreneur mindset now, and he's like thinking about marketing,
Oh,
and it's just so
I
fun.
love that. I love that he's so
hmm
interested. You need to just like record him saying that, and that's your content, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
you heard it, you heard it here,
Yeah.
from the one who's seen it the closest. Is you need to hire me weekly. No,
hmm
that is, I love that, and I totally, that's something I'm trying to remind myself too. Is like, what a cool thing, for my girls to watch, and even if it feels like I'm torn, in half, most of the time, but it's so many positives. Amazing. Let's talk a little bit more about creating content, as a mom with all the things we just talked about.
hmm
How do you create when life does feel chaotic or unpredictable? So kind of what we just talked about. I would love to hear like what your plan is for this week. Like yesterday, you're like, yeah, that was my content batching day, but like, it sounds like maybe you're still all coming back from this cold. I'm sure there were other things you probably needed, not cold, the flu, other things you probably need to get done yesterday. So like, how do you show up and create when life's happening? Like, what does that look like for you? Or what do you recommend to moms?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually am going to make a post today about what I do when life happens and I
Perfect.
can't make my content, which is in itself a great tip. A lot of people say just like film your life or just document your life
Mm-hmm.
or something. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds really easy, but it is actually really hard. But it is so much easier to think about something to say when it's kind of based on what's just actually going on right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
What am I thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
what's something that my clients keep asking me that I
Mm-hmm.
can just shoot out there and be like, hey, here's an answer to a question that seems like a lot of people have,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of drawing on real life experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing is that, I need to spend a little less time this week on posts
Mm-hmm.
because I do have other things that I need to do. So I can make it easier for myself by talking about something that I just, it's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can just write it out and that one can go out there into the
Mm-hmm.
world. Another thing is letting yourself rely on easier formats. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's all this advice out there like reels are the best or reels are dead and
Mm-hmm.
carousels are the
Mm-hmm.
best. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, it's always changing. But really, the format of post that is the best for you to go back to is whatever is easy for you to make
Mm-hmm.
and that resonates with your audience, that
Mm-hmm.
drives results for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people love just setting up the camera and they just talk. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
that's easy for you. And
Mm-hmm.
you just chat and then you
Mm-hmm.
throw it out there and
Mm-hmm.
it's done and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to overthink it. For some people, if they're about to talk to the camera, like that's going to be an hour-long ordeal
Yeah.
of like having to figure out what to say. And that's fine. That doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
your go-to content format. So I rely a lot on just easy B-roll reels. So
Mm-hmm.
B-roll clip being just like a short 10-second video clip
Mm-hmm.
and then putting some text on there. And I can dive further into the topic in the caption if I
Mm-hmm.
have more to say about it. But as someone who, like, I batch record B-roll, and so I
Mm-hmm.
have a content bank full of video clips that I can just go to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be what I'm going to post today.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of
Mm-hmm.
talking to the camera,
Yeah.
I'm just going to, whip something out from what I already have
Mm-hmm.
and let that one go out there.
I love that. I think this is something from a paid ads perspective. We always want Reels content. Reels content does, it does, like you said, it's effective, organic, whether or not it's the best, just like you said, it's so dependent on so many various factors. But I love that, and we're not, I'm going to include everything so people can check out your services and we're not making this a sales conversation. But I love that you offer B-roll content for clients because I think just like you said, I do think I'm rare in that I prefer to just open the camera and just talk. But like that's also I'm hosting a podcast. Like this is, a lot that aligns with my personality. There's a lot of people that's their nightmare and that's okay. Like there's other things that I would
Yeah.
absolutely hate to do that like other people are really good at. That's just how life is. But what you do, and I think it's so cool with your packages, and again, people can go and check it out. But and what I've seen you do is with a business like us, where like what we offer our services isn't like we can't like get a photo shoot of our products, right? Like, or like it's us and our experience and strategy, which for me, one of the hardest parts has been like how like visually, how do I illustrate that? Like almost all of my clients, I don't see in person, so whether or not it's like
Yeah.
a photo shoot, me sitting down with this fake client, like also doesn't really feel authentic to my brand because like I don't ever meet with clients really in person. So I would love to hear for like other businesses and myself out there and what I've seen you do. So I'm excited to hear your answer because I think ours are similar of what does that B-roll content creation look like for something that's not like as tangible?
Yeah, I mean, I am definitely in your boat too because when I go out and do a shoot, I love to be able to get behind the scenes content because it's like that's what I do,
Yeah.
But for me to take that myself is really hard. That's why I do what I do because, filming yourself doing your job is really hard.
Yes.
But as far as like B-roll and just having clips on hand, I think it is a lot simpler than people make it out to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
Every clip doesn't have to perfectly encapsulate everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that we want to get the message across so clearly, but a lot of content marketing happens gradually over time, that you
Mm-hmm.
kind of start to understand more and more. You get to know this person more and more. And if you scroll through your feed, a lot of those B-roll clips are kind of like really mundane things that you wouldn't even think
Mm-hmm.
anyone would care
Mm-hmm.
about, but they add some visual interest. And then what makes them even more interesting is whatever you put
Mm-hmm.
as the text on the video.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where those types of videos really shine.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like what I actually film myself doing, I have all sorts of random stuff in my content bank. And, it's like me sipping coffee, me lighting a
Mm-hmm.
candle, just me at my laptop, that like each of those clips on their own don't actually represent everything that I
Mm-hmm.
do, but
Mm-hmm.
that's okay
Mm-hmm.
because it's a piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you can get visuals that show more accurately what you do, that's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the work that I do with clients
Yeah.
is like going to where they do their work and
Mm-hmm.
filming them doing their work so that
Mm-hmm.
they have those. But when you're making something on your own, it's totally fine to have these moments that feel almost boring
Mm-hmm.
because it's your world and you're like, I sit in this spot every day. Like, why does anyone want to see my office? Or for me, it's my kitchen table
Uh-huh.
because I don't have a home office, you
Yeah.
know? But that's the little things that help you understand somebody and get to know somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel like I've been in your, without being creepy, been in your kitchen because I've seen, your content. You've like invited us into your home, if you will, or into your
Yeah.
workspace. That does feel like, I like know what your day to day looks like. And I love how you share, I don't know what day it is, but like the day you do like your tasks at home and like you share, like, here's what's on my to-do list. Like it feels like you have, and it's fun to like see how this is playing into your content pillars that I'm like, it does feel like you've invited us into your week and then you ask at the end of the week. I'm sharing, make sure you follow Leanne because I clearly am sharing like these things that she does. It feels like I'm part of your story and your community. We've met, but we haven't, actually talked that much. But I feel like I know so much more about you. And I love at the end of the week, you're like, what, like, here's some, I think you've even done like, here's some things I'm proud of, here's some wins for me. Like, what were yours? And
Hmm.
like, it feels like, especially with, and I always say post COVID, I don't know if that will ever end. Like, we ever stop non post
Yeah.
COVID, but everything after COVID and so many things being remote, like the community that kind of was lost of like in-person work and in-person meetings and things, and so much is remote, feels like, at least in my perspective, that we lost a lot of that community and working with others and feeling like we have like a team in the same regard. But like with your type of content, it feels like oh, I'm like, we're talking about our wins together. Like this is just like, this is a community that
Yeah.
in again, I think you've done an excellent job, Claire. I'm just like spitballing these things that I've seen your content so engaging that I've felt invited. Yeah, I just think you've done an excellent job. And it's really inspired me of different ways that I can continue to show up and create different types of content so that I can be inviting in that same way that you are.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you're pointing out the like structure because that is such a big part of having content pillars or having time to batch content, like all the things I've been talking about. It's just those decisions that as a mom you can make just one time so that you don't have to keep thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're talking about how I post the same things weekly.
Yeah.
And you're not talking about it in a negative way.
No.
It's like something that over time it's become memorable to
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such an important thing to remember in
Mm-hmm.
content marketing that anytime you can create repetition, it's not literally posting the same thing over and over, but
Mm-hmm.
it is like, yeah, every Friday, let's celebrate some wins.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it so easy for me so
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have to, stare at the blank document every Friday and be like, what am I going to post today?
Yeah.
Because I know what I'm going to post.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me more memorable over time. It helps people understand my world and understand what I'm about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not actually boring. I think that so many people feel like if I do the same thing over and over, people
Mm-hmm.
are going to get so bored. But every time you hang out with your friends, you just sit down and talk about what's going on this week. And like
Mm-hmm.
people's lives don't change all that
Mm-hmm.
much. But that's what connection is. We're
Yes.
just talking about life. We're just
Mm-hmm.
doing life
Mm-hmm.
together. And that's totally okay to do that on social media too.
I absolutely love that. And you're right. Like that's what's making me remember is like it's the consistency and to have that of like
Yeah.
when I show up on social media on Friday and stories, I know you're going to be there showing up with that. And again, that just feels just like comforting and like a community more than like so much like we talked about so much unpredictability and especially with social media of what you're going to get or what you're going to see. So I love that perspective of like, and it makes it easier. We do Women Owned Wednesday and we shout out women owned businesses every
Yeah.
Wednesday. We have a couple other, consistencies, but that's one that we've done, from for months now. And it's been a cool way to highlight clients, but also for us to be like, this is what's important, this is why we're doing it, and it's midweek, which is a fun thing for us. Cool. We're getting close to wrapping up here, which I think we could probably do another entire because I'm like, there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but I
So
want
many
someone to
more things
actually
to
feel like they
say.
can listen to this whole thing and it not be hours long. I'd love to hear, how has motherhood and maybe entrepreneurship, we'll say working hand in hand or just motherhood, shifted your vision of success?
Oh, I love that question. Man, I could dive so much further into my whole story, but I became a mom like in the midst of COVID. My son was born in March 2020. Like it was
Literally.
life-changing in so many ways. And I remember in those early days, like I really had to tell myself, like if I do the laundry today, that's a win. Like if I put a
Mm-hmm.
load in and wash it, if I
Mm-hmm.
don't get it all done, that's fine. But if I, press the start button on the washing machine, that's actually a win.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a huge redefinition of success to me,
Mm-hmm.
just going through that whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so thankful that I've been able to kind of weave those lessons and that self-growth into my motherhood journey and
Mm-hmm.
into my business as well now. I'm trying to think of like a really profound way to sum it up, but I mean, I think it really is just that like every moment matters. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything that we do
Mm-hmm.
matters, even if
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel huge,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not getting us like on the Forbes list of the best people of all time or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
that they put
Mm-hmm.
out there. It's like we're making a difference in the real world, in the day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really important.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And one of the last podcasts I did was with one of my really good friends as a stay-at-home mom. And I was so excited to have like that perspective, which is different than what we're talking about, and how
Yeah.
important the work at home is, which we've already talked about, in this conversation. And every single moment and the mental load of like every single thing that's happening in a mom's mind and every given point of like size of clothes to what are we, what needs to be sent to school, like all the millions of tasks that are constantly happening. But just like you said, every single one of those that is there and that you either, remember or that you forget, but you knew you forgot, you show up and you
Yeah.
continue every single day, even though it's hard as hell, just the mom part, let alone,
Yeah.
also trying to grow a business in that success, right? Those little things. And I think that's huge. I think that's very profound because I think people get stuck in the day to day, right? It's like it's the same thing over and over. And it can feel like, oh, I should be, just like you said, I should be on these lists or I should be doing, and it's like, no, this is the things that matter. And especially in this chapter with raising your family, and that is success. I love that. I could not agree more. Leanne, thank you so much for joining me and for, I know you all are getting over being sick and showing up and all the work that you do. Like I said, clearly I gave a few examples of, things that I've applied because of what I've learned from following you on social media. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, learning more about you and getting to share, just a part of what you do and how you bring so much value, clearly as a mom, but also to anyone that's lucky enough to work with you or even follow you. So thank you so much. For our listeners, we will be linking Leanne's website, her social media channels, the blog about content pillars, anything else she mentioned. But yes, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. I love learning more about you too. I love talking about social media. The fact that you invited me to talk for an hour on social media is like, this is a huge, wonderful thing to happen today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. We will definitely need to talk more because I think there's, again, social, like we could have gone into like organic and paid, which I'd love to do at some point too, and how they complement each other in ways, that they differ. So thank you again. And thank you all for listening to Roots and Realities. We'll see you next time.